He took up the big pot, peered into it, turned it upside down to make sure nothing was clinging to the bottom. Set it down with a bang. So, you have already eaten it all, greedy boys. But if you have saved no feast for me, you can at least warm me. With that, he climbed into his big straw bed with Franzel Hansel, with his cap still tied under his chin. Fritzl tried to explain that they had not been greedy, that there had never been any food, not for days to speak of. But he was too frightened of the little man. His eyes, as sharp and blue as ice, and his mouth so grumbling. Roll over, the little man was shouting at the two in the bed. I have no room. Roll over and give me half of the quilt. Fritzl saw that he was pushing his brothers out of the bed. No, he said, trying to make peace with their guest. They are little, those two. There is room for all if we lie quiet. He started to climb into the bed himself, but the little man bounced and rolled about, shouting, Give me room! Give me more quilt! And he started to climb into the bed himself. Can't you see I'm cold? I call this poor hospitality, to bring a stranger inside your door, give him nothing to eat, and then grudge him bed and covering to keep him warm. He dug his elbow into the side of skinny little Hansel. Fritzl began to feel angry. Sir, he said, I pray you be gentle with my little brother. I am sorry there is nothing to give you, but our father, the cobbler, has gone to mend shoes for the soldiers. When he returns, we look for food. Truly, this is a night to feast and to share, and if you will but lie still until he comes, I promise you. The little man rolled over and stuck his elbow into Fritzl's ribs. Promise, nah, what good is a promise? Come, get out of bed and give me your place. He drew up his knees, put his feet in the middle of Fritz's back, and pushed with a great strength. The next moment, the boy was spinning across the room. There you go, roared the little man. If you must keep warm, turn cartwheels, turn them fast. For a moment, Fritzl stood sullenly by the small speck of fire. He felt bruised and very angry. He looked over at the bed. Sure enough, the greedy little man had rolled himself up in the quilt, leaving only a short corner of it for the two younger boys. He had taken more than half of the straw for himself, and was even then pushing and digging at Hansel. Brrr, it was cold. Before he knew it, Fritzl was doing as he had been told, turning cartwheels around the room. He had passed the table and was coming toward his bed when, plop, 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 things were falling out of his pockets every time he swung his feet high over his head. Plop, plop. The two younger boys were sitting in bed. It was their cries of astonishment which brought Fritzl's feet back to the floor again to stay. In a circle about the room, he had left behind him a golden trail of oranges. Such oranges big as 2 fists. And sprinkled everywhere between were comfits wrapped in gold and silver paper. Fritzl stood and gaped at them. Here, you, get out and keep yourself warm, shouted the little man as he dug Franzel in the ribs. Cartwheels for you, boy. And the next minute, Franzel was whirling in cartwheels around the room. Plop, plop. Things were dropping out of his pockets. Christmas buns, Christmas cookies covered with icing, plums, and anise and caraway seeds. The little man was digging Hansel now in the ribs. Lazy boy, greedy boy, think you can have the bed to yourself? No, I'll have it. Out you go. And he put his feet against the littlest boy's back and pushed him onto the floor. Cartwheels, he began, but Fritzl forgetting his amazement at what was happening, shouted, "But sir, he is too little, he cannot turn." "Hold him up in the corner, then. You keep warmer when your heels are higher than your head. Step lively there. Take a leg, each of you, and be quick about it." So angry did the little man seem, and so fiery and determined, that Fritzl and Hansel hurried their little brother over to the corner, stood him on his head, and each held a leg. Donner and Blitzen, what happened then? Whack, whack, wickety whack, 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 wickety whack. Pelting the floor like hail against the roof came silver and gold pieces, all pouring out of Hansel's pockets. Fritzl began to shout. Franzel began to dance. Hansel began to shout, "Let me down, let me down." When they did, the three little boys danced around the pile, taking hands, singing tra-la-la and fiddle-dee-dee and ting-a-ling-a-ling under their breath until their breath was gone and they could no longer dance. They looked over at the bed. Fritzl was opening his mouth to say, "Now, if you please, sir, we can offer you some Christmas cheer." But the bed was empty. The quilt lay in a heap on the floor. The little man had gone. Where did he go? The three little boys were gathering the things up off the floor, putting oranges into the big wooden bowl, buns and cookies into 2 platters, silver and gold pieces into this dish and that, and right in the midst of it, in came their father, stamping and puffing. He had brought bread, he had brought milk, meat for the good stew, and noodles. Such a wonder! Such a clapping of hands, such a singing as they worked to get ready the Christmas feast. Fritzl began the story about their Christmas guest. Franzel told it mid-through, but little Hansel finished it, making his brothers stand him on his head again to show just how it was that all the silver and gold had tumbled out of his pockets. "We are the lucky ones," said the cobbler. "Always I thought it was just a tale the grandfathers told the children. The saying goes that King Larn comes every year at the Christmas to one hut, one family, to play his tricks and share his treasure hoard." "He was a very ugly little man," said Hansel. "He dug us in our ribs and took all the bed for himself." "That was the king. That is the way he plays at being fierce. Say the blessing. Come, little Jesus, and be our guest. Then draw up the chairs. Aha! What do we have to eat?" The little boys shouted their answer together. "Schnitzel, Schnatzel, and Schnutzel."